look at the student progress report from the MAP testing. As you know, our students take the MAP test 3 times during the year. They take it in the fall, the winter, and the spring. This is a national test. It's done by the Northwest Evaluation Association, but it is different than the PARCC. The PARCC test is required by the state of New Jersey. This is something as a school we decide to do and be part of in order to show student growth and look at our students from a different assessment. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the different tests and look at the student's test report. Teachers do go over these student progress reports at report card time during parent-teacher conferences, and the final progress report is always attached to the final report card during the school year. So it's important as parents that we understand what our students are doing on these assessments, and if you have any questions at any time, it's always important to notify your teacher. If you look at this test right here, the neat thing about the MAP progress report is it shows statistical data from the previous years. So this child is in 4th grade, but it shows its results from spring 2015 when the child was actually in 2nd grade, fall 2015, winter 2016, and spring 2016, which is all the 3rd grade tests that this child took. And then the fall 2016 is what this child just did. We know that they take 3 different parts of the MAP testing. They do mathematics, they do reading, and they do language usage. And this is done over 3 days. What the important thing to recognize is when you see these different columns, these colorful columns, there's actually 3 sets of information here. There is the blue, which you look right down here. It's the student RIT score, which means what they scored on the actual test. The district grade level mean, which is meaning how every student in our school district, which includes Camden's Pride and Katz Academy, did on average. And then this norm grade level mean RIT shows what all students across the nation that took this test, where they fall for grade 4. And then we'll get to this projection shortly. So we look at the fall 2016 tests. If you look right up here too, it says fall 2016-2017. This child scored a 205 right here, 205, the blue column. If you look, all right, how did my child do in comparison? Well, in comparison to other students at Camden's Pride and Camden's Academy, he scored the average was 200. So this child was above average compared to his fellow classmates. And then in the 202, which is what the national average is, and what we try to aim for, is a 202, which is also this child has scored higher there. An interesting thing to look back is to look at the spring 2016, where this child actually at the end of the year ended on a 207. So we do see a little bit of a dip from the 205 to the 207, and that's very common for they call it the summer slide, where we have the summertime where they weren't in school and they're trying to get back into the routine. So typically we do see a dip. If you even look back in this child's 2nd grade to 3rd grade, there was a big dip here too as well. So the neat thing about MAP does too, in the student progress report, is saying, all right, this child's already above average. And so what this far column is right here is the 217 shows what do we want the child to receive by the end of the year score of. We want their RIT score to be at least a 217. So it should want growth, not just hitting these standards. The other neat thing that the MAP testing does is it shows where this child's strengths are or weaknesses are in mathematics. It's broken into 4 categories: operations and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, number and operations, and geometry. If you see from their measurement and data and geometry, they are in the high average, which makes sense for the fact that this child scored a 205. But the interesting thing about this is it's a low average on operations and algebraic thinking. which means that this is where the child should really focus on. Even though they are above average, this is a weakness that we want to make sure that they address throughout the year. So now we're going to take a look at this child's results for the spring. So as you can see, it says term roster up here, spring 2016-2017. We have only our third grade, our fall, winter, and spring from third grade, and then we have our fall, winter, and spring from fourth grade. I didn't pull up the winter part because I knew that we would see it on this chart. So we have our fall scores, which we had seen on the last screen, and then we have our winter scores. As you can see, we went from a 205, remember the blue is the student, to 208. So we did see a little bit of growth. And as you can see though, where we want our norm grade level mean is 209. So even though we were higher up here, we didn't make as much growth as they like us to do. But then we moved to our spring, and remember our target was 217. Where our norm is our 213. And you can see that this child made a huge jump to 220. So we had wanted to hit the 217, and the child actually hit the 213. And what the neat thing is, if you look back on our goals and performances for both our operation and algebra thinking and our number and operations, which is high average, this before was average and now it's high average. This one right before here, the operations and algebra thinking, was low average and now it's high average. So this was a huge thing to look to see where our child's growth is. If you look at this chart of a whole bunch of different numbers over here on your far right side, the most important thing where you want to look at is actually where it says the spring right here. This is our standard RIT score, which is actually all of the blue column right here, and it shows a standard deviation, which is a statistical term that just shows if there is a little bit where you have kind of a window to get that number. But the neat thing is right here, it says from this child went from a 205 to a 220, which shows a rate growth of 15. And where they really wanted the child to score is a rate growth of 12. So this child went beyond their growth projection, which is what we want our students to do. We want to see that growth. We want them to certainly hit the norm grade level mean, but more importantly, we want to see them make progress too in their learning. So now we're going to look at our reading scores for the same student. We're back actually in the fall report. So if we scroll down, we can see our reading. We once again have our second grade scores. This fall, winter, and spring from 15-16 school year is our third grade scores. And this right here, our fall 16, is actually our fourth grade scores. You can look over in this column here and you can see the term and the year and the grade too. So as a reminder, the blue is what our child scored. So we are at a 204. The orange is what we want, or is what all our average of our students at Camden's Pride and Cats Academy did. So this is a 197. And then the yellow is what nationally the students have done. So this child has once again, similar to math, been a little bit above average from where which is great from where we are. And this column right here for our spring's 2017, they haven't taken the test yet according to this progress report, and we want the child to get a 211. Just like we had on the math, we've got some reading performance goals, and this one focuses on literature, vocabulary acquisition and use, and then informational text, which is our nonfiction text. So this child has got a high average in literature, a high average in informational text too as well, and their use of vocabulary, they have an average. Now this Lexile range is similar to what we have done with a 100-book challenge, where it determines books have specific Lexile ranges, and this is saying that if when you read a chapter book, this is the Lexile level, which is similar to a rating of a 100-book challenge. So this is where the student would be most comfortable reading just right books. And then we're going to scroll down to the language and look at that while we're at it before we flip to our next screen of the spring results. And this once again has actually just our third grade results because language isn't taken until third grade. And so this child did a 200 for the fall and fourth grade. The class average was 197, and then for the national average is 199. So once again, we're right where we want to be. And the goal is to get a 208. Now, what language focuses on is pretty much our writing and our mechanics. For our writing, for plan, organizing, developing, revise, and research, we have a high average. For language, understand, edit, and mechanics, we have an average. And language, understand, edit, grammar, and usage. This is where we really want to focus on for the school year, is understanding this component of language, understanding, editing for grammar, and usage. All right, so now we're going to go flip to the next screen to see how our child did in the spring. Now this is our spring results for the same student. We're going to scroll down to our reading. And as you recall, the child needed for their projection was a 211. So we look at our blue score for the spring 2017, and this child received a 226, which is fantastic. And you look at the goals, we have high goals on our literature, our vocabulary, and our informational text, and our Lexile level has increased. So this child made great progress in their reading progress or development. If you look over here to that chart, where we want the students to grow 7 points is what the projection is, and in reality this child grew 22 points, which again is fantastic. Now we look at our language scores, and this is interesting. It does sometimes happen, and you wonder, this is a one-day test, and you want to look at the child and see other factors too as well. Now, for our language scores here, when we started off in the fall was as 200. In the winter, we went to a 216, and actually we dropped back down in the spring to 207. Now, we're hitting right here with what our norm average should be in spring is 207. So this child is right on the average part, but you really want to look at to see what was the reasoning for this child to dip down. If you look from 200 to 207, there is growth from last year. We wanted them to get a 208. If you look over in this column right here, our growth projection said that was an 8 and they only got a 7. And this child still has the low average for understanding, edit, grammar, and usage. So it's one of those things that we want to really try to look at to see come to the end of the year. What was the reasoning for having us not see as much growth with language when we did also, though, make significant growth in reading and also in math? Well, I hope this gave you a little bit more information and clarity on how to read the MAP test progress report. It's so important as parents that you understand the data of your students. And again, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to contact your teacher to schedule a conference to get more information. Thank you.